The Deep End team acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands on which we work and live, pays respect to elders past, present and future, and recognises the importance of Indigenous knowledge to informing public debate. Welcome to The Deep End, hosted by Marcia Langton and Aaron Corn. Jack Thompson is a prolific and most highly respected Australian award-winning actor who is a major figure in the Australian cinema, particularly the Australian New Wave. He's best known as a lead actor in several acclaimed Australian films, including Sunday Too Far Away and the iconic Man from Snowy River. Jack first became involved with the Garma Festival, held by the Yothu Yindi Foundation in Northeast Arnhem Land on the Yolngu homeland of Gulkula in 1999, where he developed a deep and enduring bond with founding members of the Yothu Yindi band and Yolngu families of the Gumatj clan and related clans. Since then, he has been a regular figure presenting and supporting Yolngu communities at every Garma Festival, and was recognised recently by the Yothu Yindi Foundation with the Yolŋu Hero Award in recognition of his service. Today, we're honoured to be joined by the amazing Jack Thompson.
So Jack, Aaron and I are on Wurundjeri Bunurong country on the land of the Kulin Nations here at the Victorian College of the Arts in Melbourne. And it's a great pleasure to speak to you today. So I guess I'll kick off by just saying that I'm at the University of Melbourne. I'm the Associate Provost and Distinguished Redmond Barry Professor, and Professor Aaron Corn is the Director of the Indigenous Knowledge Institute, and we are very fortunate to be able to speak to you, one of the greatest actors in Australian history, with a long track record in film, television, stage, magnificent poetry readings, and such a great contribution to social justice. We see you at the Garma Festival every year, but you do so much more than work with your clan members, the Gumatj clan members in Northeast Arnhem Land. So we're very keen to know about what your thinking is about this moment in history where we Australian voters will vote on October 14 on the referendum question.
Right.
And I know that you are very well aware of the details, and we're looking forward to hearing your views.
Thank you very much, Marcia. Well, I'm here in Commandery country of Harbour area. I live here, and this is my home. I am, as you say, well aware of the issues of the coming referendum. I feel quite strongly about the referendum. I feel quite strongly about what's happened with the referendum. I think that the referendum essentially ought to have been bipartisan, as the referendum on the Indigenous vote was. There should have been no question about that. It's been hijacked for quite obvious and I think petty political purposes, ignoring the real significance of the referendum itself. I mean, what's happened is that the leader of the opposition, together with others, has conducted the equivalent of an election campaign on the referendum. Instead of what is required of a referendum is that members of the government, if they do anything, should inform the public of the nature of the referendum and not conducted, as I say, as a political campaign in which you set out to divide and persuade, as you would in a political campaign, to lie, to deceive, to do whatever it takes to win your party the seats. It's not like that. A referendum is a question to the people of Australia. It's not a political question. It's a social question. Do you want your children to have an education? It's that sort of a question. Do you want your people to have a health system? It's that sort of a question. And all this nonsense about, it will make for a division that's not there. A division that's not there? I mean, it's ridiculous to say that it will make for a division. The division is there. The referendum is about reducing that division and including these original inhabitants of this country that we now live in the constitution of this country. And to respond to their reasonable and considered request in the Uluru Statement from the Heart that they have access to Parliament in an advisory capacity on the matters that affect their future. We have made them, all Indigenous people, the 2+ percent of Australians we're talking about. We have made them wards of the state. And we, Australians, need, in fact, must include them in the Constitution. If we're simply to be fair-minded, if we're simply to follow the values that we uphold again and again about fair play. These people served this country in World War I, World War II, and in both cases came back here and their wages were not even paid. They were not allowed in RSL clubs. And finally, with the first referendum, we recognize these people as citizens of this country. To vote no is to say no to these people, no to the values that we uphold, no to being a fair-minded Australian. It's gutless. I could say more, but I might get into trouble.
Not as much trouble as me.
I know that, but they've misquoted you again and again.
Yeah.
To their advantage. I'm sure they will misquote me. They will. But that's not the point, really. It's been hijacked for political purposes, and it should not have been. It's shameful that it has been. It might provide a small win that will be seen by them as a win for themselves, for the opposition having lost an election. At least we can get the people to say, yes, you're right about this. It's mean-minded, at the very best, mean-minded.
So, Jack, you would have been a young adult in 1967 and entitled to vote in the 1967 referendum, which asked Australians to delete 2 discriminatory clauses from the Constitution.
Yeah.
And at that referendum, over 90% of Australians voted yes.
Yes.
And you referred to that referendum when you were speaking. So what was the mindset of Australians at that time, which resulted in such an extraordinary yes vote, as compared with what you observe today with a rather alarming set of polls on this referendum?
I think, Marcia, that the simple and most straightforward answer is that it was a bipartisan support for that referendum and not for this one. It's been the robbery of this referendum by the opposition for its own purposes, that they have sown the seeds of division and doubt. There was no one doing that in 1967. The whole country was in support of it. And I believe that had this been bipartisan, and had there not been this campaign of division and deceit, and you simply put the question to the people of Australia in the referendum, without that Australians would 90% support this referendum. Australians are good people, as they have exhibited in 1967.
Now, we both know that one of our dear friends who passed away earlier this year raised the issue of constitutional recognition with a number of prime ministers, and he talked about the existential threat that he felt his people were under. I think he said at one time, the tide might wash us out to sea. So, and you've been in the Aboriginal world long enough to have a sense of that feeling of existential threat.
Right.
Tell us your perception of that and how you see it.
Well, Marcia, there's no doubt of that existential threat. We have eroded, that's a very kind word actually, but we have eroded the culture of the people who inhabited this land, the oldest continuous cultural continuum in the world. And we have eroded that since we arrived by the murder of millions of people, one way or another. We have set out to get rid of the language of a people whose culture is transmitted in an oral tradition. It's not the first time this has happened. The British did it in Ireland. We've done it elsewhere, where you simply get rid of a culture by getting rid of any way of transmitting it. And I remember that the first doctor, being the head of Yothu Yindi, my wawa, who made me a member of his family, he was appalled by the policy of the Northern Territory government at the time of maintaining that they should not teach in Yolngu, the first language, that they should only teach in English, that they should eliminate any instruction. And he was a teacher. It was very important to him that what was taught was Yolngu as a first language, English as a second. They're perfectly capable of it. I mean, we go to high school and learn French and German, for God's sake. I mean, and the Indigenous people of this country, all of them spoke more than one language, sometimes 4 or 5. What's under threat is that culture, the oldest cultural continuum on the planet. Can we seriously believe that we have nothing to learn from this, that this does not have anything except a sort of historical tourist value? There is a great arrogance on the part of our people that we would suggest that. It's terribly important that we listen to these people, not so that they can instruct us in our government, but so that we might hear their voice, a voice that is the voice of people who, when we arrived here, were living in harmony with their environment and had not known territorial warfare for over 25,000 years at least. When we talk about what it is we wish for our society, we say that what we wish for is that we live in harmony with our environment, that we live in peace, and we are prepared to reject even the quiet voice of these people in our most primary assembly. It's a dangerous thing for us to do. We're turning our back on history. We're turning our back on intelligence. And I don't think we can afford to do that.
So you mentioned Yothu Yindi, and that was when they were at their peak, the band, when they were at their peak, that my memory is that they were very hopeful times, even though Bob Hawke had dashed our hopes when he failed to deliver on the treaty that he promised. And Yothu Yindi wrote a wonderful song, well, many wonderful songs, but they wrote one called Treaty, and the opening line was, "Well, I heard it on the radio and I saw it on the television." And I want to hand over to Aaron to ask some questions because he worked with Yolŋu.
Yeah, my memory of the 1990s and the kinds of political sentiments that were being reflected in popular music coming out of Arnhem Land back then were exceedingly hopeful and positive. And there was almost a sense that I think, the meeting of hearts and minds, in a common space, the kind of space that, the Garma Festival, for example, tried to facilitate, was going to overcome the kinds of political challenges that we feel now. I guess to segue, I'd like to bring us back to that question of whether this is actually a political debate, because like you, Jack, I personally have never seen debates of this nature around the rights of Indigenous people in Australia or anywhere else as being political. I see them as fundamental human rights issues. To me, they're above politics. And certainly my memory of Australian history for the 50-odd years that I've been alive, I'm still a lot younger than both of you, so you remember more of history than I do. But my memory of that history is that Australian politics historically had always put these issues above politics, that they were recognised as issues that deserved bipartisanship because they were about the sanctity of human life on this planet.
Well, I agree with you. It's not a political issue at all. It is a human rights issue. And I remember many years ago, it seems now, that I was at the press club in Canberra, and I was asked after I'd spoken if I would like some American stars do, support a political party. And I said, no, I wouldn't, because I felt that it was meaningless that because I was a popular actor and good at my craft, that I should advise people what to do in the political sense. And then sometime later, I did another press club interview, and I had in the meantime supported the Wandjina appeal in Western Australia to raise funds for the battle between the Indigenous people and the mining rights. And somebody challenged me afterwards and said, you said you wouldn't take a political stance, and yet you've done this appeal on television for the Wandjina appeal. And I said, how could you possibly see that as a political? These, in order to establish their rights, they need money for lawyers. That's not a political issue. It's a human rights issue. Do you want an education for your children? Yes. Do you want hospitals to provide for you? Yes. Are those political issues? But it seems, as you said, that more recently, all is grist to the politician's mill. And it turns everything into the nonsense that political debate becomes. Turn on to question time if you think it's not nonsense. It's like a very bad schoolboy debate.
So that's just one of the many campaigns that you've been involved in. And I know that for many years now, you've turned up assiduously, and we together were awarded the Yolŋu Heroes Award.
We're in great pleasure.
Yes.
I'm in good company.
And you have been able to be a very good friend to the people of Northeast Arnhem Land, and particularly your Gumatj family. Tell us a bit about how you became involved and what you've been able to do to make your own personal contribution to the Gumatj family that adopted you.
Wow. Well, Marcia, it began at the second Garma Festival when I was there. And in those days, all of the forums were held in big army tents provided by Norforce. And just recently on David Wenham's Your ABC, to my surprise and delight, the ABC actually recorded this moment for television at the time. And I was there when Munda was talking about what the Northern Territory government was doing at the time about bilingual education. And I said quite passionately that I saw it as a sort of cultural genocide to attempt to get rid of a language that had carried this culture for so many millennia. And after the session, he said to me, if there was television camera here, if there was the press here, would you say that to them? And I said, of course I would. And so they were lined up, and I did say it to them, from people saying, what would you bloody know about the Northern Territory? You got no idea, and all of that sort of thing. But I did say it, and at the end of the Garma, I was invited by he and Babaji to go with the elders and over to the edge of the escarpment, where they invited me to become a member of their family, of the Pingu and Gumatj man, and they gave me the name of the area, Gulkula. And as we were walking away from that, I said, Commander, It's a great honor. Thank you, mate. It's good. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I wake up to you, mate. This is a job too, isn't it? It's a responsibility. And he just laughed and said, yo. And I have felt that responsibility, and I have delighted in that responsibility. And on any occasion I can, I will support what it is I must support, which is my people. And my understanding that I have been very generously invited to be a part of this most ancient cultural continuum. And I do so with delight. On any occasion, Marcia, I will be there. And I have been. I have, together with some friends, I have established the Thompson Foundation, which is involved really with providing the training for people, the Gumatj people, the Yolngu people, the training required to operate a Lucas mill, to mill the timber, to learn how to build the houses that they need to build from that timber. Other people became involved along the way, came and went, but what it led to was the establishment of the mill that they have there, and it continues. We're still continuing to establish a set of principles and activities that will allow us to provide an independence for those people outside of mining royalties by accessing what is their own rightful heritage, the ironwood that in fact replaces ebony in the precious wood market. And we're in the middle of doing that. We'll go on doing. I will go on being involved with the Yolngu people for the rest of my life.
I think it's interesting that you reflecting on the early relationship with the Yothu Yindi Foundation and the Yunipingus, talked about that level of acceptance and inclusion when invited, into their family as an adoptee. I mean, I think that's something that the three of us here have experienced in one way or another. But there is a great sense that, once you become involved in that culture, that there is just one people. There is one red blood that runs through all humanity. There's a very clear sense of that, isn't there?
Very, very strongly.
Yeah.
Very strongly. And it's part of, it's part of what's inherent in the question of the referendum. Are we prepared now to embrace our Indigenous heritage, all of us, prepared to embrace that as a part of who we all are for the extraordinary advantage that it provides for all of us? It's not, there's a generosity of spirit that is quite remarkable. I received a text from a friend of mine just recently. She's a beautiful singer. Her husband's a singer-songwriter. Her name is Jules Crichton. And she sent me this text, which I am going to read at the Kerry O'Brien piece in Bellingen. I share a complicated history with this great southern land. In many ways, I'm not built for this place at all. My ancestral home is probably some cold, rocky, wind-swept highland, almost as far as you can go in another direction. My body reminds me of this in some subtle and not so subtle ways all the time. My heart and soul, however, feel as though they could have been a seed planted here 1 million years ago. This is a feeling I suspect I share with many people living here from any other far-flung land and who have utterly surrendered to the unapologetic wildness and majesty of our home. I take time quite often to consider the strength and survival of people from hundreds of First Nations with 500 languages through 2 centuries of the worst racist attitudes, policies, and victim-shaming culture continue to this day. But despite the devastating assaults against them, First Nation people have never allowed their colonizers to condemn such a rich and robust culture to the halls of history to die. They continue teaching their children their loyalty to Mother. I'm voting yes in the referendum, not because it's enough, it's not. Not because it's a solution to a complex issue or for an insurmountable amount of suffering. It's not. Not solely because it's the decent and right thing to allow the oldest continuous culture in the world to have a say in matters that concern them. It certainly is. I want a future. I want my kids to show their kids the bush. I want them to swim in the rivers, to eat lily-pillies and yams and native apples. I want the best caretakers of this place with the wisdom of 100,000 years having a voice at least in the highest office possible so that there's a country for all of us for centuries to come. Yes is an opportunity for recognizing the past and celebrating the future. If we can go into this referendum with that understanding, that if we wish to celebrate our mutual future, the answer must be yes, I do want these people and what's left of their wisdom to be included.
So, thanks very much, Jack.
I wish you all the very best, mate. I'm with you all the way. And I know that we're here together.
Thanks, Dwayne. Thanks very, very much. That was just magnificent.
I know.
Wonderful to see you, if only through a screen.
Great.
Yeah. Main ma.